Um, this class is my normal, I teach a class 2 nights a week, Wednesdays, Thursdays normally. Sometimes I switch it around a little bit, but 2 weeknights a week. I teach an all levels, all topics class. So this is going to be just that class. I'm not doing anything different, not doing anything extra, not doing anything special. The only thing is I have a lot of helpers here today because normally I have one TA. Hi, Abigail. Hi, Reggie. They share TA duties in my classes. But today I've also got Eric here from LSAT Demon, and I've got Haley here from LSAT Demon. So I see at least 4 people here that can answer your questions during class. They're going to keep an eye on the public chat. If you want to just ask questions over there in the chat, talk about your favorite ice cream, whatever. Abigail, Reggie, Eric, and Haley are all going to be keeping an eye on that. If you want to send them direct messages throughout class, you can go ahead and send them one-on-one messages, and they will be able to sort you out. I'm just going to pretty much take care of business. I do want questions. So ask questions publicly in the chat, and I'll try to keep an eye on it. Yeah, this is a special class because we opened it up to people who don't subscribe to LSAT Demon Live. That's why there's 200 something people here. Normally my classes have, 50 maybe. So we're inviting some of our other students to this class. Oh, Josh is also here from LSAT Demon. Hi, Joshua. Sorry, I didn't mention you. I don't even see. Oh, there you are. Okay. Hi, I see Josh now. Okay. So I got all kinds of help in the room, and the class is a 2-hour class, Azra. And we are going to tackle a real reading comprehension passage from a real LSAT test. We're going to tackle 3 logical reasoning questions, and we're going to do 1 logic game at the very end of class. This is the exact same format that I follow twice a week for LSAT Demon Live subscribers. If you like the class tonight, if you think that it's helpful, I would strongly encourage you to try 1 month of the Demon Live subscription. I think that we can completely blow your mind with what we do with LSAT prep. I think that you'll find that we are completely different from any other LSAT you've ever done. Mackenzie, we're going to use a practice test from the Demon. And yeah, all of the tests that we have are also available on LawHub. But we've got all the tests that are built into the Demon. There's never any reason to go outside and use LawHub. Let's do it, huh? Let's tackle some real LSAT stuff, and I can start showing you how easy the LSAT can actually be. I think that's the biggest difference between LSAT Demon and any other LSAT prep, is that we see our job as to show you how easy it actually is, rather than try to convince you that you need arcane knowledge to understand this stuff and then get you to like memorize our version of the arcane knowledge. It's just not like that. The way we teach LSAT is really intuitive. It's really natural. It's always going to be related to just read it carefully, understand what's there, what's it saying. Okay, what are they asking me now? And then when you get into the answer choices, you realize that there's one right answer. There's one answer that answers the question, y'all. And there are 4 demonstrably wrong answers for every single question. This is not a test of second best. It's also not a test that you need, as Carlin says, 20 years of ancient black magic scholarship. There are, some subtleties here and there that we can explain it to you in common sense terms that will help you understand what they're testing. But really, if you just learn to read it carefully, slowly, take your time with it, focus on solving each question, you can solve these questions on your own. And half of what I'm going to do as an LSAT teacher, maybe more, is to just ask you to reread stuff so that you can spend a little more time with it, so that you can understand what's actually there, or what it's actually asking you, or what that answer actually says. And you'll start to see that it really makes sense. I'm not going to do anything different or anything extra, though, with my class. This is going to be a pretty real representation of what I do twice a week for LSAT Demon Live subscribers. And again, the order of operations tonight, it's on the syllabus. The whole syllabus is there. It's going to be a reading comprehension passage, 3 logical reasoning questions, and then 1 logic game. That'll wrap it up for tonight. Here we go. Let's do it. Reading comprehension is the first item of business. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to read this passage, maybe a little bit longer, to read the passage and then to answer. There's 5 questions there. We'll post a survey, and that survey, you can tell me which questions gave you a hard time. When we get to about 50% on the survey, I will start my explanations. My explanation is going to involve me reading and reacting to the passage, and then I'll answer some of the questions, probably not all the questions. I'm going to focus on the ones that we really need to talk about, and then we'll shift gears into logical reasoning after that. My main tip for reading comp is that you guys need to spend more time on the passage and more time reading each question and more time trying to predict the answer to the question, and then dramatically less time on the answer choices. Most of y'all do that exactly backward. Most of y'all just race through the passage, race through the question. Let me get into these answer choices, and I hope the answer choices are going to explain it to me. That's just the absolute 100% wrong way to do LSAT reading comprehension or any LSAT questions. 4 out of 5 answers, by definition, are wrong, right? There's 5 answers there. 4 of them are wrong. And if you spend too much time in the answer choices, then you start infecting your knowledge of the passage with a whole bunch of wrong stuff. So instead, we're going to read the passage carefully. We're going to take it 1 sentence at a time. If we don't understand something, we're going to reread it immediately instead of waiting till the end of the passage and then rereading the entire passage. We don't have time to do that. We're going to read the first sentence, and if we stumble at all, we're going to reread the first sentence before we move on to the second sentence. We're going to build knowledge as we go. As we get further through the passage, it should at some point start to feel like, oh yeah, you were already telling me that, or I knew you were going to say that. If you never have that experience of, oh yeah, I figured you were going to say something like that, it's a clear indication that you're just not comprehending as you go. Because they tell you where they're going. They give you some hints about where they're going to go. You got to follow those breadcrumbs instead of just getting totally lost. You can predict the answer to half the questions on reading comp, maybe more. You got to take the time to try to make those predictions so that you then get to disrespect the wrong answer choices, because 4 out of 5 of them are wrong. And that's where you're going to get to go fast eventually. You'll get to go faster through the answer choices because you have some idea what you're looking for. All right. I'm going to turn you loose. We'll have a poll up. You can tell me which questions gave you a hard time. I'll be back somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. I usually try to hope for 50% or higher participation on the poll before I start my explanations. We'll see how we do tonight. I want to keep us on schedule roughly. Go ahead. You got 10, 12, 15 minutes to work on this passage and these 5 questions. Thanks for being here. All right, we're knocking on the door of 50% on the poll, so I'm gonna let you guys finish that as you're at your leisure. Uh, I will go ahead and read the passage to you, react the way that I would react in real life. Of course, it takes a little longer because I'm doing it out loud, you know. But what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to model the voices that are in my head. And yeah, voices, multiple in my head, because I'm looking for the author's voice. I'm also looking for the opinion of any other person that the author cites. Frequently, these authors are going to cite, you know, critics, or they're going to cite academics, or they're going to cite economists or politicians or whatever. And so I'm going to be looking for all of those different voices in the passage, and I'm going to be having a conversation with each of them, but especially the author, looking for the author's main point. Why does this document exist? If I know why this document exists, I'm halfway to answering the questions. Well, you'll see. Test J, passage 4 says, in tracing the changing face of the Irish landscape, scholars have traditionally relied primarily on evidence from historical documents. I go, yeah, that stands to reason. I mean, whether it's Ireland or anywhere else, historical documents seems like a good place to start. However, such documentary sources provide a fragmentary record at best. Oh, really? Okay. Are you saying there's a better alternative? Reliable accounts are very scarce for many parts of Ireland prior to the 17th century, and many of the relevant documents from the 16th and 17th centuries focus selectively on matters relating to military or commercial interests. Okay, so they're not telling me about a solution. They're just telling me more about the problem. At the end of that first paragraph, they're like, yeah, man, there's not even hardly anything at all prior to the 17th century. And even in the 16th and 17th century, to the extent that we have relevant documents, what we've got is military stuff or commercial interests. So maybe you're learning a lot about troop movements, and maybe you're learning a lot about grain shipments, but you're not learning as much about other stuff going on in the Irish landscape. I don't know what stuff you're interested in, but apparently you're not interested that much in military and commercial stuff. There must be other stuff that you're wanting to learn about. And I would predict, as I go into the second paragraph, I'd be like, well, okay, so are you going to tell me about some other better way? Or are you just going to complain? I kind of doubt that they're going to just complain, but they might. Let's see where they go. Studies of fossilized pollen grains preserved in peats and lake muds provide an additional means of investigating vegetative landscape change. Oh, when you said the changing Irish landscape, I wasn't sure what you meant. I thought you might be like using it figuratively, but as it turns out, no, you meant the actual landscape itself. You're talking about vegetation. So changes to forests and stuff. And you're excited apparently because we have now studies of fossilized pollen grains that have been preserved in mud, essentially. And that gives us a new way to do this kind of history. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't wake up this morning hoping to hear about pollen grains preserved in peat muds in Ireland. But that's what this document's about. And as a lawyer, we don't get to pick. The documents that arrive in our courtroom or our case or our legal office, we got to understand those documents no matter where they come from and no matter what they're about. So, all right, my client is interested in, this way of trying to figure out the history of the Irish landscape. Tell me more about this amazing discovery you've made of pollen grains in the mud. Well, details of changes in vegetation resulting from both human activities and natural events are reflected in the kinds and quantities of minute pollen grains that become trapped in sediments. Really? You can tell human events, human activities, and natural events? Huh. Yep, analysis of samples can identify which kinds of plants produced the preserved pollen grains and when they were deposited. And in many cases, the findings can serve to supplement or correct the documentary record. So they complained earlier that the documentary record is really sparse prior to the 17th century and has, focused on particular areas. This is a kind of like a biologist historian or something telling us, hey, you can actually learn stuff about human events, human activities, and natural events by studying the pollen record. Third paragraph. For example, analyses of samples from Longlu in County Down have revealed significant patterns of cereal grain pollen beginning by about 400 AD. Cereal grain? What's cereal grain? Like wheat? The substantial clay content of the soil in this part of Down makes cultivation by primitive tools difficult. Historians thought that such soils were not tilled to any significant extent until the introduction of the moldboard plow to Ireland in the 7th century AD. Because cereal cultivation would have required tilling of the soil, the pollen evidence indicates that these soils must indeed have been successfully tilled before the introduction of the new plow. So why is this interesting? Why does this document exist? Well, they're here to tell you about a discovery in historical science. Like, they used to think that this land was not cultivated. They think they have learned, based on the pollen grains that they've found in the mud, they think they've learned if they were growing cereal grains, then they had to be plowing this land. So somehow they were tilling this land even before the introduction of this new plow, which was called the moldboard plow. I have no idea what that looks like. But they're excited because they think that the pollen record shows that a previous assumption that was being made in the history of this landscape was wrong. All right. Another example concerns flax cultivation in County Down, one of the great linen producing areas of Ireland during the 18th century, if you say so. Some aspects of linen production in Down are well documented, but the documentary record tells little about the cultivation of flax, the plant from which linen is made, in that area. Remember, the documentary record tended to focus a lot on military matters or certain commercial interests, but maybe not farming stuff. So now I'm expecting, right? They're telling me that the historical record doesn't tell me much about flax, but we know that flax is important for linen. So now you're probably going to tell me the pollen record shows that there actually was flax. The record of 18th century linen production in Down, together with the knowledge that flax cultivation had been established in Ireland centuries before that time, led some historians to surmise that this plant was being cultivated in Down before the 18th century. And I guess you're going to now tell me that that's false, right? Sure enough. But pollen analyses indicate that this is not the case. Flax pollen was found only in deposits laid down since the 18th century. So it was like, yeah, we know that they knew how to cultivate flax, and we knew that they were making linen. So we assumed that they were cultivating flax this whole time. But even though they knew how, they weren't doing it here, not until the 18th century at least, because the pollen record doesn't show that there was flax pollen prior to that time. Even though they knew how to do it in Ireland, they were not doing it in County Down. Another new finding, right? Overturning old historical assumptions, a new finding because of this new type of historical, it's almost like archaeology, but it's biological stuff. Last paragraph. It must be stressed, though, that there are limits to the ability of the pollen record to reflect the vegetative history of the landscape. Oh, right. Okay, so you were telling me that you have discovered a bunch of new stuff, but now you're going to tell me that you can't figure out everything. For example, they say pollen analyses cannot identify the species, but only the genus or family of some plants. Among these is madder, a cultivated dye plant of historical importance in Ireland. Madder belongs to a plant family that also comprises various native weeds, including goosegrass. If madder pollen were present in a deposit, it would be indistinguishable from that of uncultivated native species, like this weed, goosegrass. And so what they're telling you there is you can learn some things. I mean, they learned that the land had been tilled prior to the invention of the moldboard plow. And they also learned that flax was actually not being cultivated prior to the 18th century. But they can't really tell you anything at all about madder because you wouldn't be able to tell madder pollen from normal weed pollen. So there are limits, and madder is just an example of those limits. That's what I got out of the passage. Main point is you can use pollen record to learn stuff about landscapes in Ireland, but you can't learn it all. The last paragraph kind of steps back a little bit and says, yeah, but there's limitations. Common sense, right? That's a common sense, natural reading of the passage. I'm not doing this is not anything that you guys haven't been doing since third grade. You guys have been taking tests like this. It's just that this is a little more complicated, a little more convoluted. They try to scare you by making it look like it's about science, but it's not actually about science at all. Main point of the passage is pretty simple. You can use pollen record to learn stuff about the history of the Irish landscape. I'm going to do number 27 for sure, because that was the most commonly requested question. I'm going to start there. Question number 27 was requested by 51% of this class. And it says, which one of the following most accurately describes the relationship between the second paragraph and the final paragraph? So the second paragraph was kind of a broad explanation of what this kind of pollen analysis is gonna, what it is. Like, hey, we're looking at pollen grains in mud to learn things about the historical record. Third paragraph was an example of something they've learned. Fourth paragraph was another example of something they've learned. And then the last paragraph was a limitation, right? It was, hey, you can learn stuff with this, but not everything. So what I'm looking for as I go into these answers, notice that I have not started reading answers yet. What I'm looking for here is, in the first paragraph, it was an explanation of how this new type of science works. And then the last paragraph was a like a caveat, a little bit, a limitation, just saying like, yeah, but don't get so excited because you can't really learn everything from this. The second paragraph proposes a hypothesis for which the final paragraph offers a supporting example. No, the final paragraph is a caveat. It's a limitation on the usefulness of the thing that was described in the second paragraph. B, the final paragraph describes a problem that must be solved before the method advocated in the second paragraph can be considered viable. Definitely not, because in the third paragraph, they talked about a new discovery that this method has come up with. And in the fourth paragraph, they give you another new discovery. So this thing works. The last paragraph isn't like, we got to solve this problem or else you can't ever use this. The last paragraph is simply, hey, it's not going to work in all circumstances, but you could use it in lots of other circumstances. C, the final paragraph qualifies the claim made in the second paragraph. Yeah, this is a definitional thing. I know I started off the class saying that there is not like arcane knowledge. It's not like wizard school where you need to learn magical incantations, but you do need to learn what certain phrases mean. And one of the phrases that they use a lot on the LSAT is the idea that what a qualification is. And a qualification here just means it's a limitation or a caveat. A qualification on a promise is like, I promise to buy your house if I get approved for the loan. So that the loan approval is a qualification on my offer. It means that I don't have to actually follow through with the offer if I don't get the loan. And so that's going to be correct because the final paragraph is a limitation or a qualification on the method that was described in the second paragraph. D, the second paragraph describes a view against which the author intends to argue. No, the author totally believes in this method. I don't have to read the rest of D to know that it's wrong. There's an example of where I get to go fast. You know, you guys are like, wow, this guy takes forever on the passage, and wow, this guy takes forever on the question. Yeah, but I make it up on the back end because I just know wrong answers are wrong before I even read them all the way through. I read the first half of that and I go, yeah, no, that's wrong. Bye. E, the final paragraph offers procedures to supplement the method. No, it was a limitation or a qualification. Answer here is definitely C. I think the more you guys get into LSAT reading comprehension, the more you practice it, the more you'll realize that it's not actually boring. You just, if you're bored, it's because you don't understand. Like you're not learning enough from the passage. I assure you that law school is 1,000 times more boring than any of this. Okay, so you've got to start learning from the documents. You've just got to learn as much as there is there to learn. And hey, we all learned something about one type of history that they do now. Apparently, they go dig through mud and look for pollen grains. And using those pollen grains, they can sometimes learn things about history. And I know that's not the most exciting thing that you've talked about all day today, but it is like probably a factual thing. And hopefully you can learn a little bit while answering all the questions correctly. And that's fun, right? And hopefully you guys can like fake it till you make it a little bit. Like just pretend like you like reading comp. Because if you do, you'll start getting more questions right, I think. And if you do that, then you maybe will actually like reading comp. Eric.
Because we've gotten a few questions about this, can
Yeah.
you go over the word qualify? We actually have an LSAT Demon Daily podcast episode uh, inspired by this very question, which
Yeah.
gets into the definition of the term qualify.
Yeah. Qualifies just means limited. That's all. Qualified, a qualification on the LSAT. And in real life, like you look up the dictionary definition of that, and it's going to talk about limitations. We have resources going front and back. We've got a lesson there that Abigail already linked to in the chat about qualifications that goes to the Demon Daily episode where we talked about this. This is one of very few, right? Like Eric, Reggie, Abigail, Haley, Joshua, how many of these things do you think there are that we actually talk about with our students? Like how many of these definitional things are there that we talk about with our students?
I would say not very many. I mean, it really is intuitive. So there
Yeah,
aren't many words that you need to know
no,
some crazy definition to understand.
no. In fact, so like I was gonna say that there's maybe a dozen of them, probably more like a half a dozen little things. Like you need to kind of learn how only if works, and you need to learn how unless works. And there's a couple of them, and we will encounter them in context. And once we encounter them in context, then you understand it perfectly. So it's not like go study this list. Instead, it's just do the LSAT, whichever questions give you a hard time. Like tonight in class, over half of you struggled with that question, probably because you didn't understand what qualified was. Now we all understand what qualified was, and the question makes perfect sense, right? So that's our method essentially. We just like keep studying real LSAT questions and then just talking about them. It's easier than you guys think, I promise. Um, I'll do one more. I'll do number 24. And then I'm going to turn you guys loose, or I'm going to leave you all to review the remaining questions on your own. We've got video explanations, we've got written explanations, and we've got the ask button on every single question that you can ask us questions about these explanations. So I'll I'll do number 24, and then I will we'll move on to logical reasoning. But first, Joshua.
There are some words that can be really difficult for some students, especially like ESL students. So if there's a word that is completely impossible to understand, it might be worth it. And there's no context around it. Obviously try and find context, but if it's completely impossible, then you should probably skip it. Don't waste your time trying to, you know, figure out this impossible word, especially if there's no context or you can't figure out the etymology.
Well, a lot of times it just doesn't even matter at all. That's the weird thing is it's like, if you don't understand a word on reading comp, they'll probably just give you the definition of it. Here, it was in the answer choice. And it's like, wow, you sometimes get stuck if it's in the correct answer and it's a word that you just don't understand. You're probably going to struggle with that question. There's nothing you can really do about it. But I agree with Joshua that in a lot of other cases, there's going to be single words that are in the passage or in the argument that you don't understand what they mean. Get as much as you can from context. And sometimes you can just replace it with thing. Just put thing in that spot and see if thing as a generic noun allows you to read and understand the sentence. And if you read and understand the sentence, then you could just, with thing in there, then maybe you could start thinking about what that thing meant in context. But if you slow down, I think you're going to find that the test is just easier than you guys probably imagined it to be. Let me do number 24, and then we'll move on to logical reasoning. Number 24 says, the passage indicates that pollen analyses have provided evidence against which one of the following views? Well, remember, we learned two things with pollen analyses. We learned that, whoa, I didn't mean to do that. We learned that probably the land was actually tilled prior to the invention of the moldboard plow. And if I wanted to look, I could look up the dates, probably 18th century, maybe. I think it might have said, but I could look that up if I needed the exact date. But I know that we have learned that we were wrong about whether the land was plowed. I've also learned that we were wrong about growing flax in County Down at some certain time in history, which was, yeah, before the 18th century. There was evidence against the idea that we did grow flax in County Down before the 18th century. That's probably the answer. The passage indicates that pollen analyses have provided evidence against which one of the following views? A, the moldboard plow was introduced into Ireland in the 7th century. I don't think it ever told us when. Or did it? When it mentioned the moldboard plow, in the third paragraph, oh, 7th century AD. Yeah, okay, it was 7th century AD. But it didn't tell us, like, we don't know that the plow was actually discovered earlier. The pollen record just said, hey, you had to be tilling the land here in order to find these cereal grains. It didn't tell us that the moldboard plow specifically was invented prior to the 7th century. So I can't pick A. B, in certain parts of County Down, cereal grains were not cultivated to any significant extent before the 7th century. Hold on a second. We know that we weren't regularly cultivating flax specifically prior to the 18th century. But remember, flax cultivation had been established in Ireland centuries before that time. In certain parts of County Down, cereal grains were not cultivated to any significant extent before the 7th century. I'm struggling a little bit. I'm feeling like this is the right answer, but I'm struggling to come up with my explanation of why. What did it say? It said flax cultivation in County Down, one of the great linen producing areas of Ireland during the 18th century. Some aspects of linen production in Down are well documented, but the documentary record tells little about the cultivation of flax in that area. Oh, but the earlier paragraph was also about County Down. That's the part that I missed. I got stuck on Long Lou from the second paragraph, and I thought we were talking about two different places. But then I came around and realized it says Long Lou in County Down. It's probably Long Loch in County Down. Have revealed significant patterns of cereal grain pollen beginning by about 400 AD, and that's the evidence against what B says, because we know that in some parts of County Down, cereal grains were cultivated by about 400 AD, so that's well before the 7th century, so that's the answer, B. Sorry for getting a little tripped up there. C, in certain parts of Ireland, cereal grains have been cultivated continuously since the introduction of the moldboard plow. No, we do not know that they were continuously cultivated. We know that they were cultivated beginning by about 400 AD, but then we know that there was no record of flax, at least. Oh, but flax is different. That's not even cereal grain. Yeah, I just do not know that they have been cultivated continuously since the introduction of the moldboard plow. Maybe they have. I don't have evidence against that, so I can't pick that answer. D, cereal grain cultivation requires successful tilling of the soil. The passage said that you have to till the soil in order to get cereal grain cultivation. So I'm looking for something that I have evidence against. I have evidence for C and evidence for D. E, cereal grain cultivation began in County Down around 400 AD. No, I know that there was cereal grain pollen by about 400 AD. But I do not know that that was, oh, sorry. Again, I'm looking for a must be false, and I don't have a must be false on that. I have probably a must be true. It says significant patterns of cereal grain pollen beginning by about 400 AD, which would have required cultivation. So I have evidence for C, D, and E. I have evidence against B, and that's why that's the answer. Struggled with that one a little bit, I'll be honest. Harry.
Hi, Nathan. I just had a quick question. How often do you go back to the passage for a question that's asking something this specific? Because I got most of the big picture questions correct, but 24 and 26 were asking something specific about like certain details in the passage. So when you go back,
So you have to go back.
okay.
Yeah. You got to go back. I mean, if you don't know the answer, then you got to go back. Like you have to turn a 0 into a 1. And the way you turn a 0 into the 1 is you actually take the time to go back to the passage and just figure it out. The LSAT is a solvable test. Okay. The questions mean what they say, and they say what they mean. And they really don't hide the ball that much. It's there. And Harry, you knew that it was there, right? So you just have to take the time, do the work, go back and get the point. It's like it's a test of your patience more than anything else. Like, are you detail oriented enough? Are you a lawyer? Man, are you a worker bee? Like, are you willing to do this kind of detail oriented work? Because that's what a lot of law is going to be like. But they're not hiding the answer. The answers are there. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's go do logical reasoning. I love logical reasoning. I am sad that the logic games are going away. We know that the games are going away, right? June test is the last logic games, and that section just drops out of the test, and instead they're going to pull in a new section of logical reasoning. So the test is going to become 2/3 logical reasoning and 1/3 reading comprehension. I love logical reasoning. I love teaching logical reasoning. I think it's super fun to do. I think it's super fun to talk about. These are fun little puzzles that you guys get to solve. let's do these questions one at a time. And yeah, if you're not taking the June LSAT, you don't need to study games. You can just go ahead and not do games at all if you're not taking the LSAT before August. And that is why we've moved games. I do games last in all my classes now, because I know that some people are just going to peace out of here and not do the games at all. That's totally fine, by the way. You're never going to offend us at LSAT Demon if you have to show up late for whatever reason, or if you have to leave early for whatever reason. I care 0%, like not even 1%. So if you ever have to leave early, just go. Bye. I'll talk to you next time. It's fine. We're in the internet now. We don't have to be like really apologizing about showing up late, leaving early. You guys can make the most out of your classes by just, fit them into your schedule however you can. Reggie.
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest that when people, or when we start the logical reasoning section, that people don't share the link to the question, but we will be, you'll be able to see the question on Nathan's screen, and I'll go ahead and post a poll to ask what your answer choice is. We just do that so that basically we focus on the question without knowing what the answer is going to be beforehand.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll share my screen here on this first question, and then you guys can just do it this way. Fill out our poll to let us know what your answer is. This question is solvable. So I want the idea here is you're just going to take your time and you're going to turn a 0 into a 1. Right now you've got 0 points. Turn it into a 1 by solving this question. To 65, section 1, question 12. Populations of a shrimp species at 11 different Indonesian coral reefs show substantial genetic differences from one reef to another. Okay. Is that supposed to be surprising or something? That doesn't seem that surprising to me. Oh, but you say it's surprising. This is surprising because the area's strong ocean currents probably carry baby shrimp between the different reefs, which would allow the populations to interbreed and become genetically indistinguishable. But apparently that's not true. Because you said that populations of shrimp species at 11 different Indonesian coral reefs show substantial genetic differences from one reef to another. So this is a paradox question. I can tell before I even read the question that this is going to be a paradox question because they've given me a strange set of circumstances. And then let's see what they're going to ask. They're going to say, hey, can you explain it, right? Which one of the following, if true, most helps to explain the substantial genetic differences among the shrimp population? So critical here that you understand the mystery before you start messing around with the answer choices. Those of you who struggled with this question, it's highly likely that you just went straight in and started reading A and reading B and reading C, but you don't really even understand the mystery. You can't solve the mystery if you don't understand the mystery. So what's the mystery? Well, the mystery is you got these ocean currents that are blasting these baby shrimp from one reef through another reef to another reef, mixing them all up. And that should allow the populations to interbreed and become genetically indistinguishable. But that doesn't happen. I wonder why. First thing that comes to my mind is maybe the babies don't breed. Human babies don't breed. Maybe shrimp babies don't breed. Maybe the adults never get blown around from reef to reef. Maybe only the babies get blown around from reef to reef. But maybe babies don't breed. If that were true, then that would explain how even if the babies get carried from one reef to another, if they don't procreate, then who cares if the babies get blown from one reef to another? That's my first prediction. We'll see if I can find that or something like that that would explain why, even though the babies get moved from reef to reef, the populations are still distinct from one another genetically. A, the genetic differences between the shrimp populations are much less significant than those between shrimp and any other marine species. Come on. Who cares about that? Like all that is like, well, but you know what? It's an even bigger difference when you look at the shrimp versus the sharks. That's a really big genetic difference. Huh? That doesn't explain anything about why the shrimp populations are distinct from one another. That just points to a different, worse, a bigger difference with some other thing, like a completely different species. Come on. B, the individual shrimp within a given population at any given Indonesian coral reef differ from one another genetically, even though there is widespread interbreeding within any such population. So B just says, hey, there's genetic differences even among the reefs. But does that really explain anything? I don't think so, because the reefs are genetically different from one another. So you saying, oh, they're also genetically different even within the reef, that doesn't really answer the why at all, right? All B does is it makes the mystery potentially worse. It's like, wait, what? They are interbreeding and they're genetically different even though they are interbreeding? How does that explain why they are genetically different? C, before breeding, shrimp of the species examined migrate back to the coral reef at which they were hatched. Oh. I didn't predict that. I predicted maybe the babies don't breed. But C is actually kind of similar to that because C says maybe the babies migrate back home before they breed. So if that's true, then all of these facts can be true, and there's no longer any mystery why. Yeah, the babies get blown around from reef to reef. Yeah, that should allow them to interbreed and become genetically indistinguishable. But because babies migrate back to the coral reef at which they hatched before breeding, therefore, that's why we have different genetics from reef to reef. C makes it make sense. That's why the answer is going to be C. D, most shrimp hatched at a given Indonesian coral reef are no longer present at that coral reef upon becoming old enough to breed. That makes the paradox worse. That says, hey, they do not go home before breeding. E, ocean currents probably carry many of the baby shrimp hatched at a given Indonesian coral reef out into the open ocean rather than to another coral reef. Who cares? Just because some of them get blown out to the open ocean, not to any reef at all, that doesn't explain why, when they do get blown from reef to reef, that does not cause them to all be indistinguishable genetically. C's the one that explains it. That's why C's our answer. Any questions about that? Gianfranco. I didn't hear a question from Gianfranco. Did anybody? In fact, I don't see Gianfranco anymore. Emma.
Can you go over why E is not correct?
Why do you think he's correct?
Because in my mind, I thought that if babies, like if the breed is the same within the same like coral reef, like maybe the babies were carried away by the current, but then like not to necessarily to another reef, but just like out in the open. So I guess
Oh,
it just kind of made sense to me.
yeah, but E doesn't say none of the babies get blown to another reef. E says many of the babies get blown out into the open ocean. But many just means some. And I already know that ocean currents probably carry baby shrimp between the different reefs. So E does not negate that fact. In fact, on a paradox question, the answer is never going to be something that negates one of the given facts. It needs to make the given facts make sense in light of one another.
Okay, so you're not trying to like negate the facts, you're trying to like find a solution perhaps to that
Yep,
issue.
and you got to read the question, right? The question says, which one of the, and this answers another question in the chat, by the way. Somebody had said, what about if the answer is totally fantastical or whatever? That's John's question in the chat. It doesn't matter because read the question. The question says, which one of the following, if true, most helps to explain the substantial genetic differences among the shrimp populations? So you have to give full credit to the answer that you're picking. It doesn't matter if it seems fantastical. Which one, if true, is going to do a thing? And if C is true, and maybe that's fantastical. Like, what? Really? They're going to migrate all the way back to their own home reef? That's impossible. Doesn't matter because which one, if true, so now if C is true, does it make these facts make sense? And yes, it does make these facts make sense. That's why that's the answer. Drew, and then I'm going to move on to our next LR question.
Thank you for taking my question. Can you dumb down the stimulus a little more for me? Because I'm trying to figure out where was the jump that I missed from, and I'm sure it's between the first. I mean, there's only two sentences, but I'm totally missing that jump between the first and second sentence where I'm like, okay, this is where that connection needs to be, or this is where I need to find an answer for this connection. I'm just completely lost when I read the stimulus because I'm like, I was kind of confused. I was still kind of confused by it, but I'm
That's
curious to know if
because
you
it's
could
a
dumb it down for
paradox.
me. But
No,
okay,
it's
all
not
right,
an
so
argument that makes sense, Drew. Thank you for your question. If you're thinking it's supposed to make sense, it's not supposed to make sense. Matter of fact,
yes,
they're
good.
asking you which one, if true, explains why these facts don't make sense.
Well, I think I was I think I was even a step back more because I didn't even know what the hell I was saying. So I messed up. So I should have understand it. I should have understood it a little better. But I'm still trying to figure out if there's any way you can dumb it down even a little more than what we see here to help me understand what
At
these two sentences meant. What these two sentences meant.
at every level, Drew and all y'all, at every level, okay? 130, 140, 150, 160, 170, at every level, the majority of your problems with the LSAT are going to be simply not reading carefully enough to understand what's there. I will dumb this down for you, but you've got to get in the habit of dumbing it down for yourself. Okay. You've just got to take more time with it. You've just got to read it more carefully. What it says is populations of shrimp species at 11 different reefs show substantial genetic differences from one reef to another. So if we go from reef A to B to C to D, we see distinct genetic differences between the shrimp at each reef. That's not that hard to understand if you take your time to read it carefully. You should understand what that sentence means.
Yeah, that
The
one
next
was
sentence, okay, the next sentence says, this is surprising. Wait, why is it so? You think it's surprising? So you're surprised that these shrimp populations from reef to reef are different genetically. Why are you surprised? Well, because the area's strong ocean currents probably carry baby shrimp between the different reefs, which would allow the populations to interbreed and become genetically indistinguishable. So what they're saying there is, hey, if the babies are commingling, they should be getting it on, and then there wouldn't be distinct genetic populations because the babies would all be procreating with one another. That's why this author is surprised. Do you get it now?
I get it now.
Perfect.
I get it now, but it's still like I get it now. I understand it now. I'm just
Good.
thinking to myself, this could have been a lot. Yeah, this could have been a lot worded a lot better. But that's why the question is the question is.
Welcome to the LSAT, and welcome
Yeah,
to law
exactly.
school, and welcome to legal practice. Like, it's not going to be worded well. If it was
Yeah,
worded
exactly.
well, then you wouldn't need the expensive lawyers. It's going to be worded like shit. That's why you need the expensive lawyers to come in there and figure out what the hell it says.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
let's
you
do
so
another
much.
one.
I'm going to share the link to this question just because I believe some people might be having trouble seeing the words, just so in case people need to zoom in, I'll go ahead and share the link.
Yeah, this question.
we should put that myth to bed about the LSAT not being learnable. I've been teaching LSAT professionally since 2009. Back then I used to see students improve by 10 points regularly. Like I would expect that they can improve by 10 points on a scale of just 120 to 180, right? There's only 60 points in the scale, but I would expect that people would improve by 10 points back then. Since we started doing it online and since we created the daemon, nowadays it's like I'm looking for 20 points out of you. Like I really think you can get 20 points of improvement. When I see somebody starting at 145, I'm like, cool, let's shoot for 170. Really, it just doesn't surprise me when people make that kind of a leap. So yes, the LSAT is wildly learnable. And while I'm making that point, each point of LSAT improvement is worth like $10,000 at a law school. Okay. There are law schools where the 25th percentile will be like 160 and the 75th percentile at that school will be like 167. And they're going to give full rides to people with 167s and they're not going to admit people with 160s. And so in that example, I think 1 point of LSAT improvement is actually worth like 20 grand. And so the value proposition that I'm offering you is that with 1 month of LSAT Daemon Live, it costs $295. And I know that I'm going to get you multiple points of LSAT improvement. That's why I think you should sign up. I think you should do 1 month of LSAT Daemon Live and just let us completely blow your mind. Reggie, got a question?
Yeah, I
Or
just
comment?
suggest that everyone check out the scholarships page because you can get a sense of how much money you can get for improving your LSAT score. You can see
LSATdemon.com, LSATdemon.com/scholarships. We'll put a link to that in the chat. There it is. Thank you, Haley. Check that out, play with it, and you can see the kind of numbers games that the schools are playing where they just, at some schools, we just talked about one on the podcast. It's going to come out on Monday that Ben and I were both like shocked, where it was like 97% of the class was there on a full ride. And it's just like, what is even going on? It was Campbell. Everybody check out Campbell on the scholarship estimator. It's really wild. Glad you like the roll call, Andrew. Okay, let's do this question. Test 65, section 1, question 13. Researchers have studied the cost effectiveness of growing halophytes. What are those? Those are salt-tolerant plant species for animal forage. Ooh, I can see how this would be valuable, you know, like coastal areas, hard to get water. But man, if you could grow salt-tolerant plant species, you could just pump ocean water onto these plants. That'd be awesome. Halophytes require more water than conventional crops, but they can be irrigated with seawater, and pumping seawater into farms near sea level is much cheaper than pumping fresh water from deep wells. Yeah, I'm thinking about San Diego, you know, where they have droughts regularly, but if you could just pump the seawater, they got no shortage of seawater in San Diego. And if it's cheaper than pumping from deep wells, then nice. Thus, it says, seawater agriculture near sea level should be cost effective in desert regions, although its yields are smaller than traditional freshwater agriculture. Wait a second, though. You told me about an advantage of halophytes. You told me about an advantage of using seawater. But you also told me that it requires a lot of seawater, so that's going to be a lot of pumping. So the pumping is cheaper than the deep wells, but how much more water do they require? I might have to do way more pumping. Maybe it's actually not going to turn out to be cheaper. And then I'm especially worried about the last line, because the last line says, although its yields are smaller than traditional freshwater agriculture, that's a problem. Yields, y'all. That's the amount of tomatoes that they're actually growing. That's what the yield is. So if the yield is significantly smaller, then even if it's cheaper, it might not be cost effective. See the problem? Like, what if it's half as expensive to use seawater, but the yields are only 25% as good? You'd be saving money, but you'd also be getting a lot less output, at which point that becomes not cost effective. Which one of the following, if true, most strengthens the argument above? Well, I start off on weakening always, right? I'm attacking these arguments. My job is not to agree. My job is to disagree. And I found a weakness. I said, how much smaller are those yields? I think you could make this argument a lot better if you were able to say the yields are only slightly smaller. Let's see if that turns out to be the answer. A given volume of halophytes is significantly different in nutritional value for animal forage from the same volume of conventional forage crops. Significantly different? Significantly different how? Significantly different for better or significantly different for worse? Since I don't know, I cannot pick this for a strengthener, because even if I could read it as a strengthener, the opponent could read it as a weakener, because I don't know what significantly different means. Like, which direction is it significantly different? B, some halophytes not only tolerate seawater, but require salt in order to thrive. I already know that they tolerate seawater. You saying that they have to have seawater doesn't really make your argument any better. I don't see how that makes the argument better. I was already planning on pumping seawater onto these things. You telling me that they require seawater, I know, I'm using seawater because it's cheaper. I don't see how that makes this a better argument. C, large research expenditures are needed to develop the strains of halophytes best suited for agricultural purposes. That seems like a weakener. If it's because that's a lot of money that we have to spend. How are you going to conclude that this is cost effective if it requires large research expenditures? That seems like a weakener, so that's out. D, costs other than the costs of irrigation are different for halophytes grown by means of seawater irrigation than for conventional crops. D's wrong for the exact same reason that A was wrong. Different how? Different more or different less? There's no way I can pick that. Whether this is a strengthen question or a weaken question, I can never pick it if they just say different, but they don't tell me how it's different. Last answer, pumping water, E, pumping water for irrigation is proportionally one of the largest costs involved in growing, harvesting, and distributing any forage crop for animals. That's not like a winning strengthener, okay? That is not something that like proves this conclusion to be correct. But A didn't strengthen, B didn't strengthen, C didn't strengthen, D didn't strengthen at all. And all I'm asked for is which one most strengthens the argument. Well, E does strengthen the argument. And 78% of you figured that out. E does strengthen the argument. The way it strengthens the argument is it says, hey, remember how I told you that using seawater was cheaper than pumping from deep wells? Let me add on to that and tell you that pumping water for irrigation is one of the largest costs involved in this farming. So it's cheaper on one of the largest costs. Doesn't remove my objection about the yields being smaller, doesn't cover up every sin of this argument, but it helps the argument somewhat by saying, yeah, it's better on one of the most important factors economically. And so that makes the argument better. Answer is going to be E. Sunil.
Question. Thanks for doing this. When it says strengthen the argument, are we looking to strengthen the premises or strengthen the conclusion? Would we rather strengthen the conclusion or find new reasons to make the conclusion correct, or strengthen the evidence that they're giving us already?
Neither. The evidence, we're going to accept the evidence as fact, and we do not need to strengthen the evidence. We're also not really looking for new reasons that support the conclusion. Ideally, what we're looking for is something that helps get us from the premises that we already have to the conclusion that we want on a strengthened question. If they ask you to strengthen an argument, the best way to strengthen an argument is to say, well, here's my premises and here's my conclusion. How do I get from the premises to the conclusion? So you're not really strengthening the premises, and you're not looking for like new reasons why the conclusion might be true. Instead, what you're looking for is something that helps the argument that they're actually making. Hopefully that's helpful. Harry and then Kushi.
Hi, Nathan. I picked E as well because it just made the most sense, but I was heavily debating B. Because if the Halophytes, like I know they tolerate seawater, but if they require it, doesn't that, I was thinking in the sense that it makes it more cost effective, because if they just tolerate it, there are like higher chances of the yield reducing. But if they require it, wouldn't that make it seem like, yeah, it kind of increases the odds of the yield increasing, making it more cost effective?
It's just not what it says. I mean, I can understand how you're like trying to read that into what is it? B. You're trying to read that into B, but B doesn't say anything about the yields. B just says that not only do these halophytes tolerate seawater, but they have to have seawater. That can actually only weaken the argument, because what happens if I run out of seawater? What if I wanted to use regular water?
Yeah.
Like, I get it that I'm going to be, I'm choosing the seawater. I want to use seawater on these things because it's cheaper to get the seawater. But what if it rains? What if there's a natural flood? What if I all of a sudden get an allocation of irrigation water? Like, why wouldn't I want to be able to use the regular water on these halophytes? C actually makes it less likely that the halophytes are going to be cost effective, because it says they actually need to have the salt water. And you can't say that that means that their yields are going to be better, because it's already a fact that their yields are smaller.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Cushy, and then we're going to do one more question, and then we're going to do a game.
Hey, Nathan, thanks. My question is, when we're faced with another question like this, where none of the answers are like standing out or like jumping out at us, should we just resort to like process of elimination, like you just did with like crossing out like every single other option?
Yeah. I mean, there's two ways to get to the right answer. You can predict the answer. You can positively identify the correct answer, right? Either you predict it, or you read it and you go, oh, I see how that answers the question. Yeah, sure, I like that answer. At the same time, if you can eliminate 4 wrong answers, like if you just know for sure that A, B, C, D aren't strengthening this argument at all, then you still need to like read E and make some sense of it. But if you can see how E helps the argument a little bit, and you can see how A, B, C, D just don't, then you can use that knowledge that it can't be any of these other 4 to pick the right answer. One more. It's okay to use process of elimination sometimes. You shouldn't be using process of elimination on every single question. You should be like predicting answers, and you should be feeling really good about your answers sometimes. But on some questions, you're just going to be taking the best of a bad lot, and you have to get rid of the ones that are really, really wrong. All right, we'll have a new poll up in just a second for this new question. Test 65, section 1, question 14. A principle or a rule, a thing, says, if an insurance policy is written in such a way that a reasonable person seeking insurance would not read it thoroughly before signing it, then the reasonable expectations of the policyholder concerning the policy's coverage should take legal precedence over specific language in the written policy itself. If you struggled with this question, it's very likely that you let your eyes glaze over that, didn't really think about what it meant, and then went straight into the application and straight into the question and straight into the answer choices without really understanding that rule. The way you win on the LSAT is you take a moment and you go, oh, so this rule only applies if the policy is written in such a way that a reasonable person seeking insurance wouldn't read it thoroughly before signing it. What might that be? Well, you guys think about all the contracts of like ridiculous fine print that you see in everyday life. You know, you're about to get like car insurance is the most common, or that and health insurance. Either one of those, if you looked at the policy, there's just no way that a reasonable person is ever going to read that. You're just going to sign it. You're like, I have to have car insurance. I have to have health insurance. I'm just going to sign. Like, I know the price. I want health insurance. I'm going to sign it. And so what they're saying is, if it is written in such a way that a reasonable person seeking insurance would not read it thoroughly before signing it, then what happens? Well, then your reasonable expectations of the policyholder should take legal precedence over specific language in the written policy itself. So the policy might be 5,000 pages of fine print, legalese, Latin, a bunch of shit that like no reasonable person would ever read. And it might say in there, no claims will ever be paid from this policy. Like it might say that, okay? Or like, if you make a claim on a day ending in a Y, that claim will be denied. And that could say that in the policy, like it's right there in the contract, black and white. We will never pay out any money out of this policy. But the rule said that if it was written in such a way that a reasonable person seeking insurance would not read it thoroughly before signing, then your reasonable expectations would take legal precedence over what it actually said in the contract. In other words, it doesn't matter what it said in the contract at all. It matters what your reasonable expectations were at the time. And if you had a reasonable expectation that the policy would sometimes pay out, then maybe that would win. This is a very consumer-friendly principle. Now let's see how they apply it or how they misapply it. They say, the insurance company should be required to cover the hail damage to Celia's car, even though specific language in the written policy Celia signed excluded coverage for hail damage. What's the missing piece there? Well, you didn't say anything at all about how Celia's policy was written. The rule only applies if the policy is written in such a way that a reasonable person seeking insurance would not read it thoroughly before signing it. Is that true in this case? If that was true in this case, and we also need Celia had a reasonable expectation that hail damage would be covered. There's a lot missing here if we're trying to get Celia paid. This is very much lawyer shit right here. This is exactly the type of things you're going to be doing in law school, especially a lot. It's like, what's the rule? What do the facts say? What are the missing facts in order to get the outcome that I want for my client? Well, if you're Celia's lawyer and you want to get her paid on this policy, and that's the rule, then you need to prove two things. You need to prove that this policy was written in such a way that a reasonable person seeking insurance wouldn't read it thoroughly before signing it. You also need to prove that Celia had a reasonable expectation that this hail damage would be covered. The correct answer has to say that. It has to say both of those things. A, Celia is a reasonable person and she expected the insurance policy to cover hail damage to her car. Yeah, but was the policy written in such a way that a reasonable person seeking insurance wouldn't have read it? What if this was a simplified insurance policy? What if it was one paragraph, and in that one paragraph, it said, sorry, but hail damage is not covered? Without the part about a reasonable person would never read it, would never read it due to the way it was written, without that, we don't get Celia paid. B, given the way it was written, a reasonable person would not have read Celia's insurance policy thoroughly before signing it. Great. Now I just need to know that she expected hail damage would be covered. Yep, Celia had reasonably expected the policy would cover hail damage. That's both of the things that I predicted, both of the things I was looking for. The LSAT is easy, y'all. The LSAT is predictable. If you take the time to predict it, the LSAT is easy. I promise you. The answer is B. C, the insurance policy that Celia signed was written in such a way that a reasonable person would not read it thoroughly before signing it. Oh, that's good. But Celia did read the policy thoroughly before signing it. Don't care. I mean, that's just not even relevant. The first half of C actually helps us to get Celia paid, but the reason why C does not get us Celia actually paid is because it doesn't say that hail damage would be covered. So that rule would get triggered, but without Celia's reasonable expectation, we don't have anything that trumps the actual language. And if anything, her having read the policy can only hurt us here. D, Celia did not read the insurance policy thoroughly before signing it, and a reasonable person in her position would assume that the policy would cover hail damage. That's actually wrong twice. The first half of that is wrong because her actually reading the policy isn't material. What's really relevant here is, would a reasonable person in her position have read it? The fact that she didn't read it could just mean that she's lazy. Would a reasonable person in her position have read it? I don't know. So D doesn't really trigger the rule. And then in the second half of the rule, it says that a reasonable person in her position would assume that the policy would cover hail damage. Yeah, but did Celia herself have that expectation? Because the rule said it said the reasonable expectations of the policyholder, not of a theoretical policyholder, but of the policyholder, which in this case is Celia. So that answer is actually wrong twice. E, Celia did not read the written insurance policy thoroughly before signing it, and a reasonable person in her position would not have done so either. Yeah, but did she have a reasonable expectation that hail damage would be covered? B is the only one that has both of the things we needed in order to get Celia paid. That's why the answer is B. How are we feeling? Harry.
Hi, Nathan. I picked D for this one, even though I think you kind of pointed out this to be the most incorrect answer, because I was just thinking, because we're trying to apply it to Celia's case, so is it not relevant that what she ended up actually doing in this case, which where a reasonable person would not read it? And
it doesn't matter what she actually did, because the rule is about what a reasonable person would have done in her position. So what she actually did, it doesn't say if an insurance policy is written in such a way that the policyholder doesn't read it. That's not what it says. It says in such a way that a reasonable person seeking insurance would not read it thoroughly before signing it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
In law school, in your very first year of law school, you're going to talk about this a lot. You're going to talk about it a lot in crim. In crim, you're going to be talking about mens rea a lot. You're also going to be talking in at least in my torts class, when we were talking about negligence, we were talking about a reasonable person standard a lot. And so it's like, whose mind are we trying to get into here? Are we trying to get into the actual mindset of the person, or are we trying to get into here? The rule is about the mindset of a theoretical reasonable person. And those are two different things. And all the words on the LSAT have meaning. So that's exactly the type of distinction, Harry, that's going to make that answer wrong, because it's just not quite correct. It's close, but it's just different, and it's different enough to make it wrong. Not only that, but the second half is also different enough to make it wrong. Erica, then Azra, then we got to move on to games.
I also was on the same boat as the previous person. I selected B, and I was pretty confident about what I selected, but your explanation really made sense. And I think it's more about thinking as an attorney than thinking about that specific person, is what I'm understanding, which is Celia.
The rule says, it's like, how it was like that principle is one real long sentence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Divided up by a comma halfway through. But the if clause, the thing that triggers the rule, it's not about the actual policyholder. It's about a reasonable person seeking insurance. Would a reasonable person seeking insurance have read it or not? Not, did the policyholder themselves actually read it?
Mm-hmm.
That's just lawyer shit.
Exactly.
It's
And then
two
you
it's two
explained it
different
well.
things. Yeah.
Mm.
Good. Good. You're learning, you're going to learn that it's easier than you think if you read it slower than you think you need to.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime we start racing, anytime we start worrying about the end of the section, anytime we start thinking about like, oh, I've been spending too much time on this one, I have to hurry up. It's human nature, but that's only ever going to hurt you. And the thing that's going to help you is realizing this is lawyer shit. I have to read it as slowly and as carefully as necessary to make sure that I'm really understanding what it actually says.
I have a quick question though.
Yeah.
On the actual real LSAT starting in August, is it going to be two sections of this short like questionnaire,
Yes.
or is it going to okay? So
Logical
two
reasoning is what we call it. And starting in August, there's going to be 2 scored sections of logical reasoning, 1 scored section of reading comp.
Oh, okay.
Azra, and then we are moving on to our game.
Hi, I just want to say two quick things. So, I was in between B and D myself, but the reason I picked B was because in D it said Celia did not read the insurance, and I saw that nowhere in the text did it actually say that. And then I also wanted to ask a question. I know you already touched up on this, but if a principal is saying that the right answer choice must have this and this, will the right answer choice always have to do both of those things in the principle, or could it be one or the other?
Because so there is no such thing as a principal question, first of all. Principal just means thing. The question here said, which one, if true, most justifies the above application of the principle? So the correct answer didn't have to have both of the things in it. Ideally, the correct answer would have both of the elements. But if there were 4 wrong answers that didn't do anything at all, then the one right answer here for this strengthen question actually could have just said the policy was written in such a way that a reasonable person wouldn't have read it, or it could have just said, Celia had a reasonable expectation that the policy would cover hail damage. And if the other 4 answers were bad enough, then just half of the right answer would strengthen the argument. And so, yeah, the correct answer didn't have to have both sides, but it's great that it did. And it helps us be more confident that that's the right answer, because you knew that you were looking for 2 things. If B has both of them, then that's got to be the right answer. That helpful? All right, let's move along.
Yes, thank you.
Move along. You can ask questions of my TAs. Let me show you this first of all, before we move along. I want to show you where the help is in the daemon. You can always click this right here that opens up our explanations tab. We have a full written explanation, okay, lengthy written explanation that's gonna like backward and forward explain everything about the question. If that's not enough for you, we have a video here from Ben, we have a video here from me, and we have apparently another partial written explanation. That's probably not as good as this thorough written explanation. This one up here has 39 upvotes. You can upvote and downvote our explanations. If those explanations if they're ever not sufficient for you, you can click this ask button, and that'll bring you to an entire team of tutors whose whole job is to sit around and wait for you to email good questions. And if you email the team a good question, you'll get a response within 24 hours, frequently much faster than that. So you got all the help in the world built into the LSAT daemon. All you got to do is do one question at a time and then thoroughly review until you really understand why the right answers are right and why the wrong answers are wrong. I want you to do fewer questions. I want you to do fewer practice sections. I want you to do fewer tests, but I want you to spend more time reviewing the ones that you've struggled with so that you can actually learn from all the work you're doing instead of just making the same mistakes over and over. With that, and I know I'm going to lose half of you right here because half of you are like, yep, I'm not taking the test until August. That's great. If you're not taking the test until August, and if you don't want to talk about logic games, see you later. Thank you for coming. I hope this was helpful. I want to encourage you to try 1 month of LSAT Demon Live if you have not yet done that already. I think in 1 month for $295, I can deliver far more than $295 worth of value. It's not just me. It's a whole team of teachers and tutors. We all work hard to get you to actual understanding of the test. It's wildly, wildly cheaper than one-on-one. I know a lot of you guys spend like thousands of dollars on one-on-one private tutoring. Oh my God, please try 1 month worth of LSAT Demon Live. Come to class, ask me questions, ask all of us questions. I think that we will get you a hell of a lot more value than you're going to get from your one-on-one tutor that you're paying hundreds of dollars an hour to. Let's move along to our logic game. We do have a generous discount program for those of you who qualify for the LSAC fee waiver. It's 60% off of our basic plans, 20% off of a premium or live plan. You just got to qualify for the LSAC fee waiver for that. Logic game. It's on the syllabus. I want you to get a piece of scratch paper and a pencil. I want you to start working your way through this game. First thing that I would do is I would read everything from top to bottom, and I would just try to learn one thing about the game, one thing about the system. Before I start writing anything, I just want to learn one thing about the system. Let's see. As part of an open house at a craft studio, 3 teachers, JKL, are going to give 6 consecutive presentations on 6 different subjects. Jay's going to present on needlework and origami. I'm just going to probably use N and O for those. Kudrow is going to do pottery, stenciling, and textile making, PST. Lanning is going to do woodworking, W. So it's J, K, and L, and they're doing 6 things, N, O, PST, W. The order of the presentations will meet the following conditions. K can't give 2 presentations in a row. That's a very, very powerful rule in this game because there are 3 Ks and you've only got 6 spots. And if you start thinking that through, you'll realize that K, there's not that many ways to organize those Ks. If they can't go consecutively, think about it. 1, 3, 5 would work. 1, 3, 6 would work. 1, 4, 6 would work. 2, 4, 6 would work. But I think that might be it. I think there might only be 3 or 4 ways that those Ks can be spread out. And a lot of them involve K going first. If K doesn't go first, then you know it's 2, 4, 6 for sure. Interesting. So K is really important in this game. Stenciling has to be before origami. Stenciling is a K. Origami is a J. Textile making has to be before woodworking. Textile making is a K. Woodworking is the L. So all the rules implicate K, right? K can't have 2 things in a row. And there's 3 Ks. And one of Ks has to go before origami. Another one of Ks has to go before woodworking. So K really likes to go in that first spot. I can actually think it through in my head that if K doesn't go first, then K has to go second, fourth, and sixth. But if stenciling has to be before origami, and if textile making has to be before woodworking, then I would know in that world that K's other thing, pottery, would have to go last. If K goes 2, 4, 6, then there's nowhere else that pottery could possibly go but that last spot, because you would need stenciling before origami. You would also need textile making before woodworking. If K is going to go last, then it's going to be pottery. I would probably end up splitting this game based on where the K's go. K can go 2, 4, 6, or K has to go first. That would be, again, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 6, or 1, 4, 6. There's 4 different layouts for the K's. And so maybe I would split worlds right off the bat, just figure out where those K's are. Then I would start answering questions. I'm going to use my whiteboard in a minute to show you a whole setup. But first, I want to see what you guys come up with. Work on your scratch paper. See what you come up with. I'll be back in 5, 6, 7 minutes, and I'll work through the game on the board. Thanks. I'm a little bit over time, y'all, so I'm going to go ahead and dive on in. We have a form, a Google form in the chat. You can use that Google form to upload a picture of your scratch paper, and Reggie, Abigail, Eric, Joshua, whoever's still here, will work with you one-on-one to talk about your particular diagram. I'm also going to just work through the game on the board. Worlds is our way of simplifying these games. I know that it probably looks, to a novice, it looks like real complicated, but all we're doing is limited options or templates, or we call it worlds. And so I'm going to try to attack this game with 4 worlds based on K. There's a lot of Ks, right? There's P, there's T, and, oh, sorry, not P, that first, this is supposed to be stenciling. Stenciling is one of K's presentations. T is one of K's presentations. And P is one of K's presentations. S has to go before O, and T has to go before W. So these guys don't like to go last. They can't ever go last. But P, which is one of the K's, that can go last. N, which is one of the J's, is also a wild card. When I circle things, that tends to mean that they're wild cards. But S before O and T before W, I've got those written down just so that I don't forget those 2 rules. In my 4 worlds, I'm not going to know where everybody goes in every one of my worlds. Oh, and by the way, let me just make sure that I can explain what this means. I've got 4 different ways of arranging my Ks. And I know that there's only these 4 ways because there's a rule that says the Ks can't go consecutively, but there's 3 Ks in 6 spots. So 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 6, 1, 4, 6, or 2, 4, 6, unless you can show me another way of doing those Ks, I'm pretty convinced that this is the only 4 ways of distributing the Ks. We see that? I'm seeing some nodding. That's good. This is a baby step, okay? I don't know everything, but I'm learning something about the way the Ks are distributed, and I know that that's important because there's half of my players are Ks in this game. And I am going to actually learn something here, here, and here. If S has to go before O, then this is not S, or this, or this. S can't go last. If T has to go before W, then T can't go last. But in these 3 worlds, the 6th spot is a K. And it can only be P. So I get to write that right into my templates. And that might not seem like that much, but on one of the questions or on multiple questions, they might say something like, if P goes 5th, or if P goes in any other spot, what happens? And what I would know is if P goes 1st or 3rd or 5th, then I know for sure that I have to be in the world where K goes 1, 3, and 5. If K doesn't go 1, 3, and 5, then there's no way that P could go in any of those spots. And actually, I don't think P could go first anyway. Because if P goes first, oh yeah, maybe it could, huh? You could go PN. If you started with these 2 guys, yeah, then you could go S before O and T before W, or you could go PN, TW, SO. That would work too. But it's tricky. It's hard to get P in the first spot. It's common that P is going to end up in the last spot. Can we go further here? I don't know. I think it's pretty difficult to go further. I feel like this rule and this rule are pretty much interchangeable. I don't see how I'm going to be able to eliminate those rules by placing the S or placing the T. It just seems like I'm going to end up with too many similar solutions. So at this point, I probably would just attack the questions with this as my setup. It's an incomplete setup, but I have learned some things about the way the system works. And so I'm willing to give it a shot here to see how I do on the questions. Let's see. Number 6 is just a list question. I can do these questions by process of elimination. I have to just test the rules one at a time and see if I can eliminate answer choices. So K can't go twice in a row. So that's S, T, and P. You can never see S next to T or T next to P or S next to P. So STP, that gets rid of A because it's got textile pottery right next to each other. STP. B has S blank P blank blank T. That's fine. C has S blank T blank blank P. That's fine. D has T O S. Yeah, STP are not next to each other. D's fine. Oops, E's out because E has textile making stenciling. That's 2 Ks in a row. So that one rule gets rid of A and E. No problem. Let me just keep grinding it out. S has to go before O. B has that. C has that. Oops, D has S after O. So D's now out. T before W, that gets rid of B. C, it's the only answer that's left. I know it's not A, B, D, or E. I don't see any reason why C is wrong. My answer is C. Next question. Number 7 says, what happens if textile making is presented 5th? Look at my worlds. I'm not here, I'm not here, I'm not here. I have to be in this world if textile making is 5th. Now, in real life, what I would do is I would make a new version of this. I would copy it down into a different part of my scratch paper. But because I'm blessed with a dry erase marker, maybe I'll just do it on my world here, and then I'll erase it. If T goes there, what do I know for sure? Well, T before W, so now this becomes WL. I think that's it. I don't think I really know much more than that, because I know that I've got a K first and third, but it still could be PN SO in those 4 spots, or it could be S, and then you get some flexibility. Which one of the following could be true? Can needlework go 6th? No, because W's there. Can pottery go 4th? No, because the 4th spot is not a K. A's out, B's out. Can stenciling in this world go 2nd? No, because the 2nd spot is not a K. Can stenciling go 3rd? I don't see why not. Can woodworking go 2nd? No, because woodworking is last. All you had to do was figure this out and know that the spacing is K, K, K. Once you realize that, the only possible answer is going to be D. And that's the answer for number 7. Moving on. Number 8. Oh, got to erase. Be careful doing that on the real test, because it's hard to remember what was part of your original setup and what was part of your solution for the question. So I would actually have done that in a new diagram if I had more space on my whiteboard. Number 8 says, what happens when needlework is first? Well, needlework. So that's this wild card. For needlework to be first, I can't be here, here, or here, because these are all worlds where K went first. I have to be in this world. If needlework is first in this world, then who's this? Not P, because I know P's last in that world. This could be, well, it could be S or it could be T. I don't really know. If needlework is here, I need S or T here. It's actually going to have to be SOTW or TWSO. It can only happen in those 2 ways. Maybe I would write those out if I had more space. Which one of the following could be true? Can origami be 6th? No, because P's there. Can pottery be 2nd? No, because P's 6th. Can stenciling go 3rd? No, because that's not a K. Can textile making go 5th? No, because that's not a K. Can woodworking go 3rd? I just don't see why not. T before W, if you put T here and W here, seems like that works. So the answer for number 8 is E. My incomplete worlds are doing really well here answering these questions. It doesn't really seem like, oh, whoops, that stays. This doesn't seem like it's that great of a solution, right? But it's already put me in a great position to answer number 7 and number 8. Number 9 says, where can't the 2 J's go? The 2 J's are N and O. where can't the two J's go at the same time? N and O. First and third for N and O? That would only be in this world. If I put N here and O here, I think the S goes here. TWP. I don't see why that doesn't work. So I'm pretty sure that the N and the O could go first and third. How about first and fourth? So I know O can't go first, right? So it would be N here. Oh, and then fourth? No, because there's a K there. That's the answer. Number 9B. In real life, I would scan C, D, and E. I would go, could N and O go first and fifth? And I would just look at my worlds and I would go, well, why can't this be N while this is O? I just don't see why not. D, how about second and third? I look right here and I go, why can't that be N and O? E, second and fourth? Why can't that be N and O? Why can't this be N and O? I don't see why not. But B, in none of my worlds is that ever going to work. I always have a K, either first or fourth or both. And so the answer is B for number 9. My incomplete worlds answer it. Number 10, what happens when needlework is 6th? Well, I'm not in this world. I'm not in this world. I'm not in this world. I have to be in this world. Needlework going 6th. Then what happens from there? Well, the first player is a K. I think it could still be any of the Ks. Oh, no, it can't be. It actually can't be P. If P went first now, then who would go second? It can't be O because S hasn't gone, and it can't be W because T hasn't gone. So if I put N into this spot, then I have to put either S or T into that first spot. Which one of the following must be true? Origami 4th? I don't know that that has to be true. Pottery 5th? I don't know that that has to be true. Stenciling 3rd? Don't know that that has to be true. Textile 1st? I'm pretty sure it can be S or T. Woodworking 4th? I don't see why that has to be true. So I don't immediately see why any of them have to be true. Which one seems likely to be true? Pottery 5th, maybe? The reason why that seems likely to be true is because I know pottery can't go first. Because then how can I get S or T to go? But I think probably pottery also can't go third, because if I started with like SO and then I went pottery, then I'd have the same problem here, which is T hasn't gone yet, but I need to go to W. Same thing if I tried to go TWP, that also wouldn't work because then I'd have only S and O for these two spots, but the S would have to go 5th. I can see it now. Pottery 5th is going to have to happen in that world. And so the answer for number 10 is going to be B. Last question. Which one of the following cannot be the subject of the second presentation? Can needlework go second? Boy, needlework, it's a J. Why can't that go second? I don't know. Why can't I start PN? PNSOTW, that would definitely work. So the answer is not A. Can I put origami second? Yeah, I'd have to put S first, but why can't I start SO? Seems like it would work here or here or here. I got 3 different worlds where that probably works. That's not going to be the answer. I'm looking for something that's a problem. Pottery second. Oh yeah. And my worlds answer it. I don't want to like show off too much. I've definitely done this game before, but worlds based on K kills this game. Even though it's 4 pretty much empty templates, worlds based on K destroys this game. The answer for number 11 is C, because pottery is one of my Ks. Ks either go first, third, fifth, first, third, sixth, first, fourth, sixth, or second, fourth, sixth, but when the K's go second, fourth, sixth, I know that pottery has to be last. And again, that's because S has to go before O and T has to go before W. So the only K that can go sixth is always pottery. So if there's a K in the second spot, it can't be pottery. You could actually make this world a little bit better by putting S here and T here and then letting them flip-flop. I do know that those spots are S and T in some order. But the 4 incomplete worlds just really do kill this game. And that's that. And that's the class. And I really thank you guys for being with me. Thank you for sticking it out until the end of class. I want to thank Reggie and Abigail and Eric and Haley and Joshua. Thank you for being here and interacting with all of our wonderful demon community. Do we have questions before we wrap it up? I do not think you are going to regret it if you sign up for 1 month of LSAT Demon Live. I would really encourage you to sign up for 1 month. Come to my classes, come to Reggie's classes, come to Eric's classes. Come say hi to the whole demon community. Get your questions answered. I think we will make the test easier for you rather than making it harder for you, which a lot of other LSAT prep tends to do. I'm going to leave, actually, because I've been talking a lot. I'm going to leave. I'm going to let you guys all talk to my team as long as my team feels like hanging out. Appreciate you all. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.
Hey everyone, I can stick around for a little bit to answer some questions that you guys have. I don't know if the other TAs are free to answer questions. Hopefully they are. You can, okay. Everyone say bye to Eric. He also has amazing classes, so definitely check those out. Haley's gonna stay, which is awesome. So I will, and Joshua's also gonna stay. If you have questions generally about the LSAT, I think that would be the most productive to go over. Also, if you submitted a diagram to me, I believe there are only 2 of you, but if you wouldn't mind emailing those to me, or I can download them and then I will get a response to you as soon as I can. I should be able to do it tomorrow, but I want to give you individual attention since you guys were able to send that. My email is reggie@lsatdemon.com. Think about that for a second. I will send it right there. Also, if you answered the poll earlier and you are in a pre-law organization, please email me. Tell me about your experience. I want to learn about that from you. Also, if you're interested in working with us for social media, also email me. It's a very new thing that we're working on or are interested in. So yeah, go ahead and email me. I'm gonna go ahead and take some questions. Erica?
Yeah, can you hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Mhm.
I just wanted to know what level of difficulty was the game that we just finished up at?
So I
Uh,
believe it was the second game. Give me 1 second. I have so many tabs open. Okay.
oh, level
It
2.
was, did someone answer already?
Yeah,
Okay,
Josh.
awesome. Thank you, Joshua. Yeah, so typically the first 2 games are going to be the easier games, and then as you go on through the section, they get harder. There is going to be a little bit of differentiation, but not by much.
So what are the different levels that you guys have? 4
I think
levels?
that there are 5 different levels, but they aren't like defined, like a level 1. There's not a hard and fast rule about what a level 1 is versus a level 2. Yeah, I don't.
I've done like practice ones, and I find a lot of, I find easy ones that I'm like, okay, those are easy,
Yeah.
but this wasn't easy for me at all.
For sure. The drilling tool, I don't know if you've used it very much, but those are going to give you questions that are catered to your skill level. And so it's always going to be slightly more difficult than what you're used to and what you're good at, because that's how you learn and grow. Also, there is some randomness in there, so there are going to be some more difficult questions that are thrown in. But it's kind of like you're going to start with the training wheels, and then as you are proficient in that, you're going to get on the bike. And then after that, you'll get on the motorcycle, you know? So it's not going to like throw you in the deep end. You will get there eventually.
So if you're looking at the gym exam, I mean, obviously the last one with the logic, do you think it's possible to get in a motorcycle by then?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on you. Some people perfect the games very quickly. It's something that is just personal, from person to person. I want to say that Nathan said that he perfected the games. For some reason, 6 weeks is coming to my head, but I think it was actually faster than that. If any of the other TAs know, or anyone else, it was in the one of the podcast episodes. But it really depends. So the logic games are often the easiest section to perfect. It doesn't mean everyone's going to do it, but if you put the time in, they're usually the easiest to learn. Yeah, so I really recommend learning how to build worlds. I dropped some links in there on different resources, but I'm going to drop some more. And then also a thing that was super helpful for me was Matt Dumont's strategy called Circle Slash. And there are actually some boot camps that we have set up in our lessons. I think you need a certain level of subscription. Let me find those. But they were extremely helpful for me. So here's Circle Slash. Awesome. Thank you, Haley. And then if you hear my dog in the back, I'm so sorry. She is being a pig right now. Okay, and then if someone else can, no, for some reason we can't pin messages, which is so frustrating. I don't know why. If someone could also find the other games like World Building Boot Camp, I'm pretty sure there's another one as well. Web Diagramming Boot Camp there's the other one. But yeah. Okay. Erica, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. Hopefully we see you in class soon. Monica, what's up?
Okay, so I have two questions. One generally is for timing. So I just took the April LSAT Thursday.
Yeah, how'd it go?
Horrible.
Yeah, I have a coworker who took
Hence
it
why
as
I'm
well.
here.
Yeah, and that's okay. The first suggestion I'm going to give is don't take any more official practice tests.
I have
Or
not
actual,
touched
no, not
anything.
practice tests. Don't take any more official tests until
Yeah.
you're comfortable with your practice scores.
Right.
Yeah, I told my coworker, I was like, please, please, please don't take it, because I knew she could improve her score. And this was like sort of a joke, but also not. I was like, I will pay you the cancellation fee, like, to cancel, because it's really that important, you know?
Yeah.
Every score is every official test is super important. Joshua, you don't have to raise your hand. You're good.
Do you recommend that I just start studying based on the fact that I just know that I did horrible, or as far as like wait till my score comes out? Because I mean, I'm
Yeah.
pretty confident in my horrible,
Well, the
as
one thing is
embarrassing
that
as
it's
that
really
is, Jen.
hard. Yeah, it's actually really hard for students to gauge how they did on the LSAT, on the official
Right.
one. Just as an example, when I took the official, I was like, I went from thinking that I got like a 157 or higher, or 175, sorry, or higher, to by the time scores were releasing, I was like, you know what, I might have gotten a 168. And I ended up scoring a 180. So it's like you really have no idea of like where you're going to score. Um, so it's really hard to gauge. But no matter what you're going to score on the April exam, I think it's valuable to keep studying because you don't know whether you're going to want to take it again.
Right.
And it's most likely that you're gonna, if you were to continue studying, you would improve your score. And like Nathan said, like it's no joke that every single point is really worth like $10,000
Right.
in scholarship.
And I guess my last follow-up question would be since the scores come out in less than 2 weeks, and then, do you think it would be in my best interest to hold off on maybe signing up for the live class until the end of the 2 weeks? Or would you suggest just jumping in? Just say like money is not the issue. Like
Sure.
I'm not worried about that part. Because I would be celebrating hands down if I got the right score. I would just be like, forget the money
Yeah.
or whatever. So if that wasn't the issue, would you think that would be a beneficial to me?
Yeah.
Or
I think it is a difficult question to answer, but I think the
yeah.
thing that you have to consider is one, do you believe that you can improve from your practice tests, right? Because your practice tests are really the gauge of what you're going to do on the official. You
Okay.
might do worse with the test anxiety and things like that, but test anxiety goes away with preparation. But the thing is, if you feel like you could do better, and I think you can, I don't know what you're scoring right now, but I think everyone can improve. Um, and depending on what your goals are for law school, like say you want to go to a regional school and it's not like ranked super high or anything, right? There's depending on your score, you might already be getting a full ride or a possible stipend, you know? So I also recommend looking at that scholarship tool,
Yeah.
because that will kind of give you a gauge of where you, like, depending on the school that you want to go to and the amount that you are comfortable paying. But if you are not in that, if you're not in striking distance of the score that you want in order to go to the school that you want, then I recommend doing the live class because you're not going to like get a 5-point increase on the April exam than you were in practice tests. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I can guarantee that with the 5 months that I've been preparing since November,
Mm-hmm.
that I can get into the law school that I want,
Mm-hmm.
but that they won't pay me
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
much as I would have liked to
Mm-hmm.
with because I let the anxiety of the test and the
Mm-hmm.
clock in the corner
Yeah.
drive me to yeah.
Did you turn
That's
off
what
the
I
clock
was.
during
No, I
the?
did not.
Okay, that's step number one.
Yeah.
You have to get used to not looking at the clock.
Yeah.
That literally is a game changer. And the thing is, depending on where you're scoring and your accuracy, you should not be trying to finish the section. If you are getting like 10 to 15 questions right, you need to start by taking the section and only answering the first 10 in the whole 35 minutes because you want to make sure that you're getting those first 10 questions right. And once you do that consistently, then you can add some more questions and then go on. But if you're not scoring in the like 170s, you should not be answering every question. The other thing with that scholarship estimator, if you know that you're pretty likely to get into the school that you want, play around with it, like increase the LSAT score of what happens if I score this school or this score. Would I get more money? And then you'll kind of get a sense of what your goal score should be, but we also don't really advocate for having a goal score. But I think that like knowing a range of what you want based on your goals is good. But also once you get there, you might find that you can increase even more and go to a better school or get more money, you know?
Right. Okay. I'll let other people ask questions, but that was so helpful. And hopefully some people learn from that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully that was helpful. Also, if any of the TAs want to chime in, feel free. You don't have to raise your hand or anything. Just interrupt if you disagree or have additional advice.
I just wanted to add that, if she had any insight onto why she thinks she did poorly, and if it was, time pressure, then you can practice that, of course, by taking time tests. I mean, I know the experimental sections really get to people. They don't have enough stamina by the end. They're like, oh my God, I'm so done with this administration. And then, you can take 4-section tests on LSAT Demon. And those were really helpful for me. Taking 4-section tests really helped me get through.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, sorry.
I would like to mention something. I saw one of the videos by, I don't know his name, the teacher that was just on. And he was talking about the waiver, no, the accommodation, there you go, for extra time. And I literally just printed it out. I went to my regular doctor, like my main, and I was like, hey, I'm taking this test. Can you fill this out for me? It was super easy. All she needed to do is sign it. And I submitted it. It was like that easy to get double time, And I remember saying that in one of his YouTube videos, suggesting people like it's so easy to get it.
Yeah, it is super easy. And all of the, like, Nathan and Ben have been talking about that probably since LSAT Demon and before was created. And they've asked people to, like, if you've tried to sign up and got a no, please tell us. And they haven't had a single person tell them that they didn't get it accepted. The only thing is, yes, you might need extra time depending on certain things. Like I know you can get it if you have like ADHD, if you have anxiety, those and other like mental health issues. Like, yeah. And so like I suffer from anxiety and depression for like most of my life, right? So like I would qualify for accommodations. The only thing though is that a lot of times when you give yourself more time, especially with like double time, unless you need it, you might be kind of giving yourself more rope to like hang yourself. I don't know the phrase, you know what I mean? You might be giving yourself too much rope because then you might, because each section then is an hour. So then you have a 4-hour exam compared to like a 2.5-hour exam. But if you need it, then there's literally nothing wrong with that. The other thing is like if you get accommodations, it's a game changer with scores, and I think everyone should take advantage of it because it exists. People, especially like people of color, women as well, are like in society, we are at a disadvantage, right? And if we have an opportunity to take advantage of something that is going to help us get more money to get into schools that we might not have otherwise, I think it's only fair that we do that. Because personally, I feel like we haven't had those advantages, throughout our lives. So yeah. Is it Samin? Please correct me if I'm.
Yeah, you pronounced it correctly.
Oh, awesome. How can I help you?
So I guess my question is also related to time, or time pressure, but in a different sense. How often do you come across students that take like a year or more to study for this test? Because oftentimes, one thing I really struggle with is like hearing people say, oh, I mastered the test in 3 months, 6 months, or 8 months. And I'm like, I've been studying for a year plus, and it's like it's
Yeah.
very easy to like feel discouraged.
Yeah.
So I guess I just want to know like how often do you see students take more than that?
Yeah. I believe Ala, one of our tutors, who I believe scored, I'm gonna check real quick. I believe she scored either 174 or 175. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but let me look it up real quick. She scored a 176. And she started at a 145. And I don't remember how long exactly she was studying, because I remember she said it recently in a class that I watched. It was like multiple years, I'm pretty sure. For some reason, I 4 years is in my head, and that was like on and off. I don't know if that's accurate or not. But it is not unusual to see people studying for multiple years. And the thing is, one, you should not have a timeline for when you want to apply to law school or take the LSAT. The thing is, law school is literally always going to be there. There's no reason to like rush into getting into debt, right? If you can improve your your LSAT score and you genuinely believe that you can break through those plateaus, then it's going to be worth it no matter how long it takes. And the other thing too is that during that time, yeah, like Paul said, I think 3 to 6 month mastery, like that's a little unreasonable. And I think the people who do that are probably starting at a closer score of like a 165 or something like that, right? But there shouldn't be a timeline, because like one, the rushing into debt thing, and then two, you can use that time where you're studying for the LSAT to really learn if law school is for you. Because honestly, it's not for everyone. Not to say it's not for any one specific person, but if you learn more about the occupation, if you meet lawyers, if you talk to lawyers, you might find that it isn't for you. And then you're going to save tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even while you did study for the test, that isn't very much time lost compared to the 3 years and the money, right, going into law school. So I think there are two benefits for not being worried about how long it's taking you. Just as an example for me, I mean, I scored a 180, right? And I'm still not sure if law school's for me. I don't know if I want to go, because it's a huge financial decision. Even if I were to get a stipend or a full ride, that's 3 years where I'm not making income, right? And then the other thing is like, I've worked in the legal field for about over 2 years, and I don't know if I would be happy, right? So even though I was good at the exam, did well, it still doesn't mean that I want to be a lawyer, you know? So take your time.
All right,
I'm
thank
sorry
you.
my like answers are so long-winded, but
No, I really appreciate it. That was really good. Thank you.
yeah. Emily, I love your last name. Hopefully that's your actual last name.
It is actually it's my actual last name. And
That's really cute. I love that.
I'm not currently married, and I don't intend to change it should I ever decide to get married.
But you should not, unless it was cooler, and I doubt that.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been studying, I've taken the test officially twice.
Okay.
I've canceled my score both times because I don't like my score. So I'm like, I don't even want that on my record.
Sure.
I'm taking it one last time, regardless. Like I'm not gonna, whenever I take it the next time is gonna be the last time, because I can't keep taking this and like going back and taking and all that kind of stuff. Plus, I know there's limits on how many times you can take it. Right now, I'm sitting at a 150 to 153 as a practice test. And logic games is by far my best section,
Mm-hmm.
continuing to study and doing self-study. I'm actually working with a different prep program, but I'm going back and forth with them, and I'm not sure I'm super happy with them. And I'm wavering on, should I go ahead and register for the June test, knowing I've got 6 weeks to get 6 more, at minimum 6 more points.
Okay. So I have a couple of things. The first thing about the cancellation is that, like Haley said in the chat, cancellations they look worse than a bad score. The reason for that is that when you cancel a score, that kind of leaves an empty, there's just a question mark, right?
Right.
The law school admissions don't know what that means. They can assume the worst, right?
Right.
The thing is, the only thing that they care about is the highest score.
Right.
They do not care. They're not taking your average score, unless there are some schools in Canada, I believe, that do that. But they only care about your highest score because that's the only one that they have to report on the 509 reports. And so you really don't have to worry about getting an official low score. Yeah, and then your other point about not wanting to take it again, I would push back on that. I really am curious why that would stop you. Because the thing is, like, law school is going to be hard. The legal field is hard, right?
Yeah, I work as a family law paralegal right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's difficult. Like it's really hard. I honestly think that if you really want to do this, and it's going to be worth it for you to like keep pushing. And
oh yeah, no, I have to take it one more time, but I want
Yeah.
that one more time to be the last time. I don't want to have to feel like I'm like that I can always do better. So that's what I was trying to get at, and I did not eloquently at this late of hour.
No, yeah, I get that. It's also almost midnight where I am, so I feel that. I do understand what you were saying about you are going to take it one more time. I think that like that is a good idea. I even think beyond that because I believe currently you can take 5 attempts within 5 years, I want to say.
7 years
7 years. Thank you,
with
Haley.
some exceptions.
Yeah, because I mean, if you have an issue, like if you had a proctoring issue or something like that, then you can try to get a retake. Haley, do you have any suggestions about Emily's question?
Yeah, I mean, games is the easiest section to perfect. That's the easiest way to boost your score. It sucks to say it, but if you're in a financial position to do it, I would register for June and wait till the very last minute to not cancel your registration, push it to the next one. So that way it doesn't look like a cancellation on your record, and push it to August if you are able to, and just eat the 195 or whatever it is now to register for the test. Because that games, if you can perfect games with your score you're at now, you're going to be mid to high 160s easy, and that's a full ride at most T50 schools. I'm at a T30 right now, and that would get you a full ride here. So
unfortunately, I'm a splitter too, so I only have like a 3.0 because I thought I was going to med school, and I did not do well in my upper level biology classes before switching majors. So that's just adding to this whole situation.
Have you looked at the scholarship estimator yet?
Yes, I have.
Okay, perfect. So you know where you kind of need to be at. I would say same boat then. Games is gonna be the easiest way to boost yourself into the 170s if that's what you need being a splitter. And then just if you get to a week before the June test and you're not there yet, then just eat the cost, push your test to August, and then just let logic games go and focus on LR and RC for the future.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not necessarily, because I know I probably want to practice family law and lots of other reasons. I'm hoping ideally if I could plan everything and like be the master of the universe to get exactly where I wanted to go, I'd start at Albany Law in January and I need a 159 to 162 to get in and get scholarship. So
Okay, yeah, looking at theirs, is there any other law schools in your area that are higher ranked that you would consider?
well, right now I'm in Colorado. So I'm looking to relocate because I can't afford to live in Colorado anymore. It's too expensive.
But I'm in Utah, so I understand that one. Okay, yeah, I didn't realize I'm the worst where Albany was. If you're gonna go to New York, personally, we always say go to the highest ranked law school you can for free. I wouldn't go personally to a law school that's ranked anything below the 100. Just because at that point they're still setting up their foundation, they can be predatory, they kick people out, they have lots of like if you don't hit a certain GPA in law school, then you're losing your scholarship. There's lots of conditional scholarships. You don't see that as much in 0 to 100 schools, but you see that a ton, 100 and beyond. So that's like, I know that's a whole separate side conversation, but to derail you from where you're thinking of, especially where there's so many great schools in New York, but aren't T14 schools, I would look in other areas. But that would be just my recommendation for rankings where rankings matter.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I don't think you're gonna have any issue being a splitter. I know so many people who are splitters, as long as you get that LSAT score. But yeah, really, if you want to only do one more attempt and then be done, then it's just gonna have to be potentially eating that cost of that test if you're not quite ready for June, and then just not letting you beat yourself up that you studied for logic games for months and then didn't end up using them. I think at that point, just
Yeah,
you have
I'm not
to, you know.
I'm not necessarily worried about logic games versus not logic games on the study end. I'm worried about getting the score I can to get the scholarship I need to get into school. I mean, and the benefit for me too that I think a lot of other students don't have is